we're going to jump back in time to the world of 18th century opera to talk about a work called The Sacrifice of Farinelli, written and directed by my next guest, Stuart Bruce. Stuart, welcome to Triple R.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Farinelli, the name to me immediately says, okay, we're a famous castrati singer, somebody who was wooed and pursued by lovers of various genders, as a castrato, also then meaning castrated at birth or very, very young, to ensure a pure, perfect, almost inhuman singing voice. What was it about this character and this world that made you want to write a fictionalized account of life in the world of 18th century opera?
To me, it spoke as such a great symbol for the price of art, the price of reaching for something more. And I saw in the history this cultural practice in the 1700s in Italy, and seeing that families offering up children to be castrated for this purpose that they regarded as almost divine, and then also the financial means that they're reaching for as well, and then bringing that into contemporary sensibilities where we're grappling with temptations with narcissism and technology and these allures and plastic surgery, even intervening in nature to get a result. And so I found that as a perfect sort of vessel. And then, given I'm a kind of traditional and immersive theatre guy, blending these two practices, I thought, wouldn't that be great to tell that story, fictionalise and dramatise some of these elements and bring in a lot of music and really make it relevant to today?
Why did you want to fictionalise a story rather than tell a straightforward, biographical piece of theatre about Farinelli?
Primarily to make it the most interesting thing I can. And also, Farinelli is such a name that resonates with so many people, and they know the stories. So people who are interested in that part of history already know the history. And then there are also some really interesting moments in the history which I think, because there's a gap in the record in the nature of history itself, as we can't know the private testimony for sure, it leaves open an opportunity to take license, kind of like Peter Schaeffer did with Amadeus. And so we can dramatise an element and look at a moment in history and go, well, I wonder what they might have felt and what a fly-on-the-wall conversation might have been like. And so I put in these fly-in-the-wall conversations, like between the maestro and the father discussing castration, and also between the castrato and his newfound love that they can't get married. And those conversations would have happened all across Italy. And so I thought that would be great to theatricalize that and build into that. And of course, if it helps people, they'll go down the rabbit warren into the history on their own, which is kind of a fun thing for audiences to do in their private time. But then they come to the show and they get something that's off the wall and kind of unexpected. And
you've created very much an immersive theatrical environment for people. So this is not a traditional audience is seated, the fourth wall. There is the theatre, there is the stage on which things happen. It's happening all around the audience.
That's it, environmental staging. So we have characters with candelabras walking around the audience, and we have apparitions in cloaks holding candles walking around, and we have ultrasonic speaker technology, so a speaker that moves around the room slowly and throws the sound around the room, and when it's pointing at you, it's like it's in your head. So we're using these experiences which really localize and kind of ground someone in the present, which is meant to be, I think, the unique selling point of theatre as opposed to all the other formats where you can infinitely stream it. This is a live moment-to-moment thing we're trying to create.
And it's certainly, for me, it's that liveness, and the sensation of sharing something with your fellow audience members can't be beat. Yeah, you can sit at home and stream a new release film, and if you've got whiz-bang sound system and speakers, it will look and sound great, but you're watching it on your own, or perhaps with a couple of friends or family members. The opportunity to be part of an audience, to experience drama and despair and tension and thrill together with the performers who are doing it is kind of unmissable.
It's unmissable, and there's something that really connects you to a kind of common humanity, and the play becomes co-created. So the actors, they know their lines, and then, you know, they say something and the audience reacts, and then that feeds the next moment for the actor. So their performance is wedded to the reception of the performance from the audience. So that connects us, and we get that live experience that you can't get anywhere else. And I really lean into that. So I have some characters that are cartoonish and the actors are outlandish and using that craft to make it sort of larger than reality and inauthentic in a sense, and then other acting styles which lean towards really authentic, and we can really sort of intimately share with the audience, so we get that juxtaposition between real and fake.
Now, the real Farinelli, the castrato, has been described as kind of the first operatic superstar, effectively, and had an older brother, Riccardo, and Carlo is the off-stage name of Farinelli. So you've got Riccardo and Carlo as your central characters. Talk to us about their dynamic, because Riccardo is a composer, so presumably he's composing work for Carlo to sing, but Carlo's getting all the limelight.
Exactly. And that's a really interesting dynamic and metaphor for someone being an artist themselves. Legitimately, Riccardo Broschi was his own artist in his own right, yet lived in the gravity of the orbit of his famous brother. And then how do you, as an artist, find your authentic voice, given there's so many temptations to live vicariously through other art forms and other artists? And it's kind of the thing is, when I was learning music, I'd cover a lot of my favorite artists. And then when do I kind of cover less and start to sing my own work? And so it's this sort of idea that Riccardo needs to find his own voice, separate from Carlo. And so I'm building in that dynamic. So it's not just the story of Farinelli, it's the story of Riccardo and finding your artistic authenticity. And so Riccardo's journey is, in a sense, more important than Carlo's journey, because Carlo is a castrato. We see him as the superstar. I'm taking an interpretation that Carlo has a kind of misanthropy and a disillusionment with the industry, the scene, the art. He's kind of clocked the art. You know, he's so great. He kind of has nowhere else to climb. Whereas Riccardo needs to find his own voice. And in a sense, I have a little bit of marriage with history, because the real Farinelli retired at the peak of his career at 32 years of age and never sung in public again. And so we don't know the heart of Farinelli, of Carlo Broschi, but I'm dramatising that to say, well, what if he was actually really aggrieved that he couldn't get married and he couldn't be with the one he loves like everyone else can? And in that sort of patriarchal, very family-based society, to be sort of excluded from that institution of marriage is devastating, and then also devastating for the person he loves too. So there is a real star-crossed lovers drama in the story.
Now, one of the actors, Elsa Caruso, plays a major part. Talk to us about her and her role.
Well, I got really lucky in the casting, in the sense that she just fits the part so perfectly. She's a theatre maker in her own right as well. So she brought all this intelligence and layers to it, and I'm a devising theatre maker, so we go through a process of iterating the script and improvisational workshops to find what the scene should be, to find a deeper voice in the scene. And Elsa has blossomed, and the character has really become a symbol of yearning for female empowerment in an oppressive society. And the character Teresa that she's playing is based on a real character from history. But of course, we don't know what Teresa was like in history, because the females maybe didn't have they weren't recorded and reported because of the patriarchal nature of the society. So there's a lot of, I guess, license that we have to explore and go, well, I wonder what she would have felt like falling in love with a castrato.
Now, in terms of, as we've said, the staging of the show, you're creating an immersive world in which the actors are moving around and through the audience members. Talk to us about the sound and sound design, because yes, you're using works by Bach, Handel, Vivaldi from the 18th century, but you've also got contemporary composition in the mix.
Correct, yes. The dream is to have even arias in the piece mixed with contemporary sounds and electronic sounds, so that I'm drawing this line back to the Baroque, which is in many ways an origin of popular music today, and that Enlightenment period where so much of our culture can find its origin in the Baroque. And so that the Baroque is not something that's anachronistic to audiences. They can come in and go, there's actually... I see the seeds of our culture in the Baroque, and like a portal back in time, they step into the venue and it's all happening around them, and that I've woven a fabric of music. So it's like they're in the mind of the composer Riccardo, and they're feeling like they're swimming in a world of music. That's my dream. And to give the audience that experience, as I myself have discovered more classical music and fallen in love with opera, I want to sort of bring that newfound love to help audiences access opera and classical, as well as relate it to contemporary music today.
If you've just tuned in, I'm speaking with Stuart Bruce, who's the writer and director of The Sacrifice of Farinelli, which is on from today, previewing tonight at 7:30 p.m, with the season running through until the 29th of August at the Bluestone Church Arts Space, 8A Hyde Street in Footscray, and presented by Subverse Theatre, and you can find out details at www.subversetheatre.net. Now, Stuart, this is your debut play as a playwright. It's also your debut as a director. So no pressure then.
No pressure, and it's obviously wearing way too many hats, but this is the nature of indie theatre and taking all these risks. I'm clashing forms and genre together and driving that vision through, and it's just been about team building, finding collaborators, finding people who share in that experimental ideology about how to make art and find a way to devise something that might take us to unexpected places. And so, we have a historical vessel, but then we're taking extraordinary license in some ways to find really interesting dramatic ideas and something that audiences can relate to today. So we should find quite a fair bit of modernity in the piece, I think. But yes, it's certainly a challenge to be trying to reify something from nothing. It came from my imagination, came from my study of history and my newfound love of opera and classical music, as well as my love of contemporary music and as well as the blues. It's actually a blues influence in the piece, but it's probably not apparent sonically, musically. But I have a Faustian bargain, like a deal with the devil, borrowed from that sort of crossroads idea in the blues, where the maestro and Salvatore, the father, have to, discuss castration and castrating their son, Salvatore's son. So that is a high price to pay for the divine art that they're going to access.
What do you want to achieve with Subverse Theatre?
I would really love to provide a vessel for people who are early career, mid-career, and looking to take risks free from the commercial pressures of hitting that result and finding something in their craft that is nascent and ready to blossom. And so that's why I try and hold these containers where we're very improvisational. And we can have long stretches of silence if they're trying to work. It sort of feels like an acting class almost. And then we find a voice in their character, and we use that as a reference point as we learn lines and actually put the performance together. Like, do you remember when it felt really truthful and authentic in that improvisational exercise? Those are the kinds of feelings we want to retain as we go into performing, where there's all the technical considerations with lights and sound and cues and working the audience as well, making sure you have enough energy and voice and vocal clarity. But Subverse Theatre is really about taking risks so that people who are ready to find a new gear in their acting, in their writing, in their producing, that I provide that vessel and that space and a passion that I'll keep turning up and keep kind of doing the hard yards to believe in theatre as a live entertainment form which will help us in this age of technology and AI and these other things, that if the actor is there, they're sweating, they're real, they're human, and we co-create it together.
Written and directed by Stuart Bruce, The Sacrifice of Farinelli, presented by Subverse Theatre, is on from today, previewing this evening, and then running through until the 29th of August, Wednesdays to Saturdays at 7:30 p.m, Sundays at 2 p.m. And the opening night is tomorrow night, Friday the 14th 7:30 p.m. Tickets are $42 for 35 concession. Tonight, the preview, $30, and bookings online only at www.subversetheatre.net. Find out all the details about the production there as well, including the cast and the creative team. I've been chatting with writer-director Stuart Bruce about The Sacrifice of Farinelli, bringing the dramas of the 18th century opera world into the present day in an immersive piece of theatre. Stuart, we don't know what castrati sounded like. So the closest thing we have today would be a countertenor. But how otherworldly do you think castrati would have sounded to opera goers in the 18th century?
It's a great question because their vocal cords remained in a tighter way like a child's, but their vocal mechanism grew into a man's size, and then their chest would also grow larger because the bones would grow more thanks to the altered hormones that they were experiencing. So then they're also, because it's a kind of one-way street, castration, and being thrown into that opera training world at that time, they would just train all day with breathing exercises until they had these extraordinarily long expressions that they could sing. And so the aura they created, and as well as the mythology, maybe they say that they could sing a note for a whole minute, but maybe that's the mythology around the castrati is something that's really interesting in the history of like what was real, what was fake. But we have a very grainy recording of the last castrato called Alessandro Moreschi. You can look it up on YouTube. It's very eerie. It's probably too warbly and distorted because it's old technology recording him. But you can capture a little bit of the otherworldly quality. You can hear that in that YouTube. And in a sense, then you read the testimony from people who were in awe of the castrati in the concerts, and they would faint and stumble around in the aisles and cry and yell, and the sort of first sort of parasocial hysteria around a superstar on the stage. Before Michael Jackson and Elvis and these characters, there was Farinelli, and the idea about these long phrases and creating the sort of divine apparition on stage is sort of part of that castrati mythology. And I do use some of that and satirize that and use evocative lighting and imagery as well as some live singing and effects to create the sound of a castrato in a real space where you can hopefully go, wow, maybe that is what it would have sounded like, and I'm in the presence of that voice.
Well, I'm not going to play that grainy YouTube clip you mentioned, but I am going to play a Handel piece from, I think it's the opera Circe.
Circe, that's right.
From Act 1, Scene 1. Performed by the countertenor Francesco Bonazzetta, and that'll give us perhaps a hint, a sense of what people might have heard back in the day. So the details again: The Sacrifice of Farinelli, on from today through to the 29th of August at the Bluestone Church Art Space, 8A Hyde Street, Footscray. Details at subversetheatre.net. I've been chatting with the writer-director of The Sacrifice of Farinelli, Stuart Bruce. Stuart, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.